Whereas the General Council is the inherent governing body of the Yankton Sioux, Ihanktonwan, and whereas are part of a confederation of member nations, commonly referred to as Oceti Sakowin, and in English, the Great Sioux Nation, and whereas the Ihanktonwan, Dakota, Oyate, Yankton Sioux are a nation of indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere who, through birthright, are sovereign, whereas said birthright has been recognized as such by the United States government in bilateral sovereign treaties with all Ihanktonwan treaties, and whereas said sovereignty was further honored and recognized by the signing of the treaty between the Pawnee and Yankton Sioux for the establishment of peace and restoration of friendship, which was made in a Grand Council at Ponca Village on the Ponca's Reservation in the territory of Dakota on the 23rd day of January 1863, represented by 6 chiefs, warriors, and headsmen of each sovereign, the Pawnee and the Yankton. And whereas the Pawnee, Ponca, and Yankton Ihanktonwan have honored this treaty for the last 150 years, and whereas the Ihanktonwan have invited the Ponca and the Pawnee to revisit the January 23rd, 1863 peace treaty from 150 years ago, and give notice to the United States that they have violated the 1863 treaty by refusing to listen to the Pawnee, Ihanktonwan, Yankton Sioux objections to the intrusion of the Keystone XL Pipeline on treaty lands and Aboriginal territory, that the Eastern Keystone Pipeline has already been constructed in eastern South Dakota, despite adamant objections of the Ihanktonwan. And whereas the construction of this pipeline is deemed hazardous to the land, water, and life of the Ihanktonwan, Yankton Sioux, and whereas on December 3rd, 2012, the General Council enacted Resolution Number 2012-2013, reiterating adamant opposition to this threat to our environment, health, and Aboriginal lands. And whereas Oceti Sakowin bands and other affected tribes are invited to a historic joining of the Yankton, Ponca, and Pawnee at a ceremonial gathering during January 23rd through 25th, 2013 at Fort Randall Casino near Wagner in Ihanktonwan territory, and to provide position statements, education, and strategic plans to stop the Keystone Pipeline. And whereas the treaty delegates from the Treaty Steering Committee of the Ihanktonwan obtained resolution of support from the Black Hills Sioux Nation Treaty Council for this action on December 21st, 2012 in Rapid City, South Dakota. And whereas the Yankton Sioux, Ihanktonwan, Dakota are a non-Indian Reorganization Act government and retain a traditional form of government which requires nation-to-nation consultation with the inherent authority of the tribe, the General Council, and this has not been done by the Department of State in regard to Keystone XL. And whereas the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples contains sovereign principles that declares our inherent authority to abide by these protocols of natural law, and we hereby attach this document as we endorse it. Whereas underneath the responsibilities of man, a declaration that was passed by the American states, and whereas the Department of State and Department of Interior on denying us the opportunity to conduct our responsibility to man and to provide our environment, and underneath the Geneva Convention in 1976, we filed a red paper in Geneva, Switzerland, and in this document we declare the right to live as a common man. And because of the Carter administration, under Secretary James Watt, they declared the Great Plains states a national sacrifice area, which encompasses our Aboriginal territories of Oceti Sakowin. And whereas at this Grand Council, hosted by the Yankton and the Pawnee, A new treaty will be signed to reinforce the position of peace between the Pawnee and the Yankton and other nation allies to protect Inamaka and our people against this environmental threat to said sovereign Indigenous nations who have not had free, prior, and informed consent in this action in violation of the 1863 Peace Treaty. And now therefore be it resolved that the General Council of the Yankton Sioux Ihanktonwan approves signatory authority for the chairman and vice chairman and traditional headsman and Tioshpai Society, Eton Chan of the Yankton Sioux Oyate to sign this new treaty, which will be presented at the Grand Council on Friday, January 25th, 2013. And be it further resolved that this action will represent the official position of the Ihanktonwan Yankton Sioux, further opposing tar sands development, standing in solidarity with the Pawnee Nation and other affected sovereigns of Aboriginal descent, tribes, and treaty councils. This is to certify that the above foregoing resolution was duly authorized and adopted by the General Council of the Yankton Sioux, Ihanktonwan Dakota, on this 22nd day of January 2013, at a meeting held at Fort Randall Casino Hotel in Pickstown, South Dakota, on the Yankton Sioux Reservation, by a vote of 26 in favor, 9 opposed, and motion carried.
Amatakipi, apetukle, ake yo chante washtan apechuzapi. Nale ujimaka ona ianti. Ache takuache otehi ohinajipi. Nka hana watiki ake uchayu tapi. Today, there's many nations, mothers, grandmothers, and we are here on this Turtle Island where we are the First Nations and we have treaties among our people like many other nations all over the world. So today we have a treaty that was made 150 years ago by the Pawnee and the Ponca, and was made a treaty with our relatives, the Ihanktonwan Oyate. The Ihanktonwan is one of the Dakota, and we are all one nation as a Sioux Nation, but originally, no, we are the First Nation here. So this treaty still has in effect as 1980, the Supreme Court ruled that the U.S. government had a treaty with the Great Sioux Nation, and this treaty is the most rankest, ripest underdealing case in the history of U.S. But we also have our own here, which is the First Nations of Turtle Island, and we still maintain that peace treaty among our people, and that's why we gather here today to sign this treaty. And so this would help us with the problems that we are having up in Canada, and our relatives up there, and our relatives are here, the First Nations. We will maintain this treaty, and it will always be in our hearts and our mind. And be part of our the Oyate.